Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani and welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism, narcissistic relationships, and healing from narcissistic relationships. So let's talk about enablers, because this has a lot to do with what makes these relationships more difficult. So what happens when a trauma-bonded person is an enabler, and more importantly, you get hurt by this? What gets so tricky is that there's lots of reasons people are enablers, right? So we can ask the question, where do the enablers come from? And we've talked about that topic before on this channel. There are lots of types of enablers. There are the toxically positive folks. There are the Pollyannas. There are the people who benefit from the narcissist and don't want to burn that bridge. Or people who might be a little bit narcissistic themselves. There may be issues around, culture where they're not willing to call the narcissist out. All of that misses one group we don't talk about enough, which are people who are trauma bonded themselves. Now, as you come out of this sort of haze of confusion and self-blame cycles of narcissistic abuse, you recognize yourself how difficult all of this is, how sticky and difficult to cut the trauma bond can be. That even when you understand it, you know how easy it is to get pulled back in, you ruminate, you still experience waves of grief. But there's a lot of people out there who are trauma bonded and remain trauma bonded. They may not even have their eyes open, let alone doing the work, and they will not recognize the narcissistic patterns for what they are. They are in it. And any of us can think of ourselves and reflect on what it was like for us when we were in the darkness of the full-on trauma bond. We couldn't hear or see clearly what was happening in front of us either. So the person who remains trauma bonded, and this could be a parent, for example, you have one parent who's narcissistic and the other who's trauma bonded to them. It could be a friend, for example, who remains trauma bonded to their really rude narcissistic spouse. Any of these people could easily be enablers, right? Because enabling means that you just keep giving the narcissistic person supply. You keep justifying their behavior. You gaslight other people. You're in denial. And if you do point out the patterns to an enabler, they will gaslight you, or at a minimum, they'll just keep trying to justify the patterns to other people. All the stuff a trauma-bonded person will do. Now, this can be a deeply uncomfortable position because you may care about, love, and clearly see what is happening to the trauma-bonded person in the relationship. But you may also be harmed by their enabling. This can all pull you into a dissonant, confusing, and triangulated place where you now may feel bad for the trauma-bonded enabler and yet are also being harmed by their enabling behavior. Now, if you grew up in a circumstance like this, you certainly didn't understand it as a child. But as the dynamic becomes more and more clear to you as an adult, it can really take a toll on you because you may feel a loyalty and a protection toward the trauma-bonded person and got that from them too. But now you get a clearer view on the harm they did by enabling the narcissistic co-parent. You may also recognize that perhaps they didn't have much of a choice. At the time, there was no information about this. Your enabling parent may have been financially reliant. There may have been cultural or religious issues at play. But all of that said, it can be deeply painful to sort this out. You may also feel invested in the enabling trauma-bonded parent because they were your one link to anything that resembled a decent childhood. Despite the enabling, that parent may have been there for you, been compassionate and helped you, and wasn't directly cruel to you, but may have minimized or continued to fuel the behavior of the narcissistic other parent. You may feel tremendous guilt for distancing from the trauma-bonded parent, as well as guilt about the anger you feel toward them. And this isn't easy. If the narcissistic parent gets more demanding or difficult with age, having to continue to watch this circumstance unfold while you now sort of understand what narcissism is can feel really, really galling. Now, while this dynamic, this trauma-bonded enabler dynamic, is most painful in parental relationships, you may also have it within friend groups or in the way a friend behaves with a romantic partner or spouse, and watch them continually enable the toxic friend or toxic partner who is harming others within the group. Sadly, these circumstances, again, the trauma-bonded enabler circumstances, more often than not, do end up in you having to practice some level of disengagement. A massive part of healing is discernment. And you may find that despite the empathy you may feel for the enabler, that you may need to distance yourself from the enabler because it is too painful to keep seeing the dynamic play out and then manage your own cascade of guilt. The balancing act of recognizing that you may have needed that person who was an enabler, frustration about what the situation is, but not wanting to cut them out, but also exhausted by the narcissistic person they are enabling, make these very painful situations. So you may just end up disengaging, and yes, that may mean the trauma-bonded enabler goes in deeper with the narcissistic person. At some point, you do need to recognize that just as you did once upon a time, that they too need to take responsibility for themselves too. You've been through enough, and you can't be their rescuer. And of course, you may really want to point it out to them. You want to educate them to about the narcissism, open their eyes. Be careful, that's not going to get you very far, and it may frustrate you further. You aren't their shrink, and this is their process to go through. That's how you figured it out. You went through your difficult process. But you have your process, and finding that delicate balance isn't easy. Remember that one a core element of enabling is denial. And it either is active denial, like, I don't want to know this. Please stop pointing this out to me. And then there's more of a passive, like what denial is, the defense mechanism, la, 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 I don't see anything, and really living in that truth that almost becomes a delusional reality. All of that said, this is a really difficult conversation. And I'm going to say it again. A video like this really speaks to how complicated and layered that healing is. That this isn't just about, oh, I understand trauma bonding, I'm feeling better. And as much as I do my best on YouTube trying to make this known, YouTube is sort of giving sort of a top line, like introducing you to these topics, talking about a variety of them. But if you really want to do that deep dive into healing, please join our healing program. It's been going for over a year. We've really seen people make some leaps and bounds in their healing. So if you really want to explore that, the deeper work, all of it, journaling, questions getting answered in a platform that's designed just for people who are focusing on this, please join us. The details for that are in the video notes. I'll talk about healing as much as I can on YouTube, but if you're ready to make that next step, would love to have you join us. And thank you.